wanted to talk a little bit about where we've been with this work and how it emerged. So the professional standards for educational leaders is really foundational to our work on school leadership here at the Council, and our inclusive leadership work is very much grounded in the PSEL. We know that effective principals are particularly important for the success of students with disabilities, and that when principals create safe, supportive, inclusive learning environments, students with disabilities and other students who may struggle to learn in school are really able to thrive. And so as a supplement to the professional standards for educational leaders, so not as something separate, but really something to extend and enhance the PSEL, last year CCSSO released in partnership with the Cedar Center the PSEL 2015, Promoting Principal Leadership for the Success of Students with Disabilities. And this supplementary guidance document highlights those aspects of the PSEL that are most relevant for leading inclusive school environments. And it also outlines some key steps every state can take to ensure that principals are both prepared in their initial in-service preparation and then supported through their ongoing development and professional learning to lead optimal inclusive learning environments for the success of each learner. We didn't want to stop at the release of a document, but rather wanted to continue the momentum around it. So we held, in partnership with the Cedar Center and the Center on Great Teachers and Leaders, a collaborative meeting of 32 individuals representing OSERS and the Office of Special Education Programs, as well as the Office of Elementary and Secondary Education, those funded federal technical assistance centers, as well as national organizations, so advocacy organizations, researchers, really to discuss the critical role that effective principals play in supporting and strengthening outcomes for students with disabilities. Each organization at that meeting made specific commitments for how they plan to support states and just more broadly districts and schools in carrying out inclusive principal leadership in policy and in practice. And so based on that momentum, in order to sustain and build upon that one-day meeting, CCSSO launched this national collaborative on inclusive principal leadership to support states on advancing inclusive leadership in policy and in practice. And it's a diverse alliance of about 20 organizations whose logos appear up on this screen, including principal associations, again, advocacy and member organizations, technical assistance centers, researchers, ed prep programs, both across traditional preparation and alternative prep, as well as nonprofits. Over the course of really the past year, from June of last year to June of this year, the group convened and worked collaboratively together to develop Supporting Inclusive Schools for the Success of Each Child, a guide for states on principal leadership, CCSSO inclusiveprincipalsguide.org. This resource really identifies 8 key strategies that states can take to integrate inclusive principal leadership into policy and in practice, as well as some aligned resources to support states. Just wanted to highlight the names of the organizations that over the past year developed this guide in partnership to reach some consensus around what we mean when we say inclusive principal leadership, and reach consensus on really the strategies and resources to support states in furthering this work. And this guide really would not have been possible without our great partnership with the Cedar Center, as well as through CCSSO's partnership with the Oak Foundation. So this group identified 8 strategies that states can take to integrate inclusive leadership in policy and practice, from setting a vision and planning for inclusive principal leadership to ensure that students with disabilities are really at the front and center of states' visions for equity, as well as they're incorporated into their vision for effective school leadership, to cultivating coherence and collaboration, both across the SEA, across key divisions, from special education to talent to school improvement, transforming principal preparation and licensure, so really focusing on those policy levers like program approval and licensure to ensure that inclusive principal leadership practices are really embedded within those policies, to promoting principal development on inclusive practices. So thinking about the supports that principals receive once they're on the job to lead optimal inclusive learning environments for the success of each child. providing some targeted supports to districts and schools by way of things like guidance, funding, and direct support, to connecting school improvement and principal development initiatives. As states begin to identify targeted schools for targeted support and improvement, they will be identified due to the persistent low performance of groups of students, including students with disabilities and English learners. And so supporting that intentional connection between the role of the inclusive principal leadership and supporting achievement, and meaningfully engaging stakeholders as partners in the work, engaging educator preparation programs and parents and families. And then lastly, adopting processes and supports for continuous improvement, collecting data along the way to measure what's working and what isn't, and redirecting course as needed. So today we really want to focus on those strategies and the aligned resources that are most top of mind for you all and relevant to the work that you're leading in your respective roles at your various agencies or institutions. Up here on the screen, you all can see a capture of the Inclusive Principal Leadership microsite, supporting inclusive schools for the success of each child, CCSSO, inclusiveprincipalsguide.org.
We really wanted, when we were building this resource, to focus this on questions that teams could ask of themselves to really get started on this work. We separated it out into 4 main categories: chief state school officers and their leadership teams, educator talent and effectiveness office, special education, and school improvement. As a state-serving organization, that tends to be our focus, though there are questions within each of these drop-down menus that really get to a larger sense that could be used by educator preparation programs when they're thinking about program review and program revision around inclusive leadership. For example, I clicked under the drop-down menu, Chief State School Officers and their leadership teams. Are the needs with students with disabilities explicitly addressed in your state's equity plan and overall vision for equity? I think that question could be very easily adapted to, are the needs of students with disabilities explicitly addressed in the curriculum that you provide incoming educators and principals? So these questions can be fairly easily adapted. I think that there are a couple key questions around how well are various departments or teams within the SEA working together to provide coherent and aligned expectations for the support of school leaders in establishing inclusive practices. So how are different areas within your department working on these issues? As we go further down, we can see that there are more targeted questions when you go down to educator talent and effectiveness, special education, as well as school improvement. And the reason for this targeting is so that each of these offices have an entry point to get in. But when we think about this resource holistically, these questions are a place to start. But the real meat of this resource are the state strategies, which we believe are universal.
I'm going to highlight 2 strategies in particular. Strategy 2, cultivating coherence and collaboration. And listed up on the screen are suggested actions that a state could take to advance coherence and collaboration really across the agency, as well as in partnership with key partners outside the agency, such as educator preparation programs and districts, to really integrate inclusive principal leadership practices and embed them through preparation and ongoing development. The importance of cross-divisional teams with strong external partnerships really cannot be understated in this work, as this work really touches upon so many areas within an agency, like across an agency, from talent and educator effectiveness to school leadership and school improvement and special education, as well as even the English learner division, because great inclusive principal leadership practices are really great practices for each and every learner. And it is about tailoring supports for each and every child to succeed. So this work is best undertaken in partnerships with LEAs, IHEs or educator preparation programs, and parents and families to support change at the district, principal prep, and the school levels. So that is strategy 2, just an overview of suggested state actions under that strategy to ensure strong partnerships really across their agency, as well as external to their agency in partnership with districts and ed prep programs. And then strategy 3 around transforming principal preparation and licensure, I also want to highlight. here are some, again, suggested example actions that states could take to transform principal preparation and licensure for the success of students with disabilities. So working with IHEs and educator preparation programs in your state, it may be meaningful to establish and or implement with fidelity principal preparation approval policies that ensure that all new principals can really establish optimal inclusive cultures within their schools and identify high leverage evidence-based practices for the success of students with disabilities and support their teachers and staff to implement those strategies. Where applicable, SEAs can also require that principal preparation programs build into their evaluation processes the requirement for a robust body of evidence that shows that they're able to prepare principals to effectively support their students with disabilities. This is in line with the recently released NELP standards, which can be used to guide program design, accreditation review, and state program approval. So those are just two strategies I'll highlight and some of the example or suggested actions that states can take, recognizing that this will look different in different states based on your particular context and priorities. In addition to the state strategies, there is a resources section on the microsite with some suggested resources aligned to each of the strategies. So I'll highlight just the few under the strategies I just overviewed. Strategy 2, cultivate coherence and collaboration. There are a couple of resources identified here, including one that CCSSO released in partnership with Aspen on Leading for Equity, Opportunity for State Education Chiefs, really around supporting states and creating more equitable education systems. Equity Commitment 9 on establishing the conditions for optimal learning is directly connected to this inclusive principal leadership work. And then strategy 3, there are so many great resources under strategy 3 for transforming principal preparation and licensure, many of which are from the Cedar Center, including the course enhancement module on school leadership for students with disabilities, which can really inform at the preparation level, as well as in ongoing development and professional learning. I think it can be applied there as well, but particularly in reforms to coursework, informing the integration of inclusive principal leadership practices into preparation program review and approval, as well as licensure and certification. Also, the innovation configuration on principal leadership and moving toward inclusive and high achieving schools for students with disabilities, another great resource from the Cedar Center. And promises to keep transforming educator preparation to better serve a diverse range of learners is really focused on state leaders and education agencies as an audience to transform policies related to preparation and ongoing professional learning for principals, but really focused on the preparation piece in transforming program review and approval, licensure and certification, as well as practices around data collection, analysis, and reporting to ensure that principals are prepared to establish and continuously lead inclusive learning environments.